with the affirmative.
Okay. So wait, I should probably confirm. So you're Westlake EE?
Yeah.
And you're Holy Cross BC? I won't be like blocking your camera or anything, right?
No, it's
Okay.
fine. Let me know when you're ready, Judge.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I'm good.
Cool. And do you mind just saying slow if you want me to slow down?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Contention 1 is the Kingdom Industrial Complex. The war in Yemen is an atrocity. Hearts of 18 Saudi coalition aided by U.S. supplied weapons and refueling assistance has bombed and killed thousands. Saudi airstrikes target hospitals, water treatment plant, and even a funeral of pleasure. The Pentagon should be 100% certain the U.S. weapons and funding are being used in Yemen, or we should cut off U.S. support. Trump falsely certified that the Saudis were taking due care to avoid civilians. The certification was a blatant evasion of a congressional requirement. The blockade have put millions of Yemenis at starvation and attacks on civilian infrastructure have to cholera outbreak. The Saudi UAE effort threatens to dramatically worsen civilian suffering. All support is the key internal link. Other countries are backing out now. Dewan, 18 number of countries have restricted arms sales to Saudi Arabia. Calls for more restrictions have been growing in Europe. Trump has pointed to lucrative arms sales as reason to stand by the community. The United States is the biggest supplier. Our exporters have to dramatically decrease their supply despite decreases the overall value of Saudi weapons imports. The increase entirely because of a huge uptake from the U.S. No country comes close to the U.S. and weapons supply. The UK was a distant second. China supplies a negligible amount. Russia supplies little military. It symbolically greenlights war. It emboldens MBS, Hudson 15, Oxfam, and Amnesty International, USA, and Human Rights Watch accuse Washington of being complicit in what they call Saudi Arabia's indiscriminate airstrikes. Arms transfers give a green light to indefinite military intervention, substantially relieving the pressure on the Cable Coalition and the government of Yemen to agree to ceasefire. And weapons are directly transferred to terrorist groups. Chaos and lack of political will makes accountability impossible. Al-Ghabir et al. 19 Saudi Arabia coalition transferred weapons to Al-Qaeda fighters, Al-Qaeda, Salafi militias, and other factions. Weapons made their way into Iranian-backed rebels, exposing the extensive military attack in Saudi Arabia and the UAE have used weaponry as a form of currency to buy loyalty of military or militias or tribes in the Yemen state. Partial politics means little over accountability or tracking trader groups have gained from U.S. arms militia leaders obtain military hardware in exchange for manpower. Arms markets operate openly linked to AFF. The Abu Police Brigade possesses U.S.-made Oshkosh armored vehicles. Abu was recorded terrorist in 2017, but the group still enjoys grief from Saudi coalition. The Saudi Syria drop American-made TOW missiles on AFF MRAP vehicle. They are bear stickers with the insignia of the Giants Brigade sent from Beaumont, Texas to Abu Dhabi before ending up in the hands of militia recipients of the U.S. weapon. We are legally obligated to prior authorization. Authorization was never obligated. Majority of American troops that are caused by IEDs. It is critical MRAP vulnerabilities does not fall into enemy hands. Mark the card at enemy hands and coalition objectives. Promote terrorism. Fenced Harvey 18 Saudi Arabia and UAE policies in Yemen allow Al-Qaeda to thrive secretly supporting the faction undermining efforts to defeat AFF. The UAE supporting militias with ties to AFF. The coalition and cut deals giving them cash. AFF fighters joining coalition. The USA was also aware and held off airstrike coalition support with for Al-Qaeda could lead to the long-term presence of extremists and new generations will be powerful. Al-Qaeda has recruited many fighters because of the chaos in Yemen and some even voice support for because of the stability it provides. Saudi Arabia's one campaign allowed air capital only ending the chaos, calling and strengthening democratic transition can prevent extremism plan. The United States ought not provide military to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The plan solves the blank check evoking support results in a peace process. Band 1218 ongoing peace talks offer hope they have advanced further than previous attempts. Western nations turning against the war and turning encourage Saudi Arabia. Disarming possessions necessary to enduring peace long as we have confounded the blank check from Washington. The Kingdom has no reason to temper its policy. The administration is taking the next step and not all support for the war. war, and the playing grounds of Rose Saudi Air Force Battle, 1870 by spare parts, munitions, and technical support. The RSF is entirely dependent on American support for F-15 fighter jets, Apache, and Tornado of Washington. Also, the RSF will be granted fill-in as wrong tech integration checks. Cavalry, 1860% of arms came from the United States Saudi militia. Military relies on American tanks, planes, and missiles. European governments feel strong domestic political pressure not to export. Transforming the militia to employ Russian Chinese weapons would cost a fortune, requires years of training, greatly reduce military power for a generation. Russia cannot produce fighter aircraft, tanks, and infantry vehicles. China does not produce government exported aircraft. Saudi Arabia wants, and conditioning fails, no consistent metrics, opacity, and conflicting agency authorities, and no political follow-through. Venture 15, either state or DoD use consistent metrics, measure progress. The DoD assessments and internal assessments and public pose the challenges to the department's decision-making on future programs, contrary to government authorities, including insufficient efforts to track participants and persistent interagency disagreements. And there's no pro of Fitzpatrick. 15 Saudi industries elementary, they have no facilities, research programs, or specialist arrangement would take 15 years more, but who would tell NSG agreed not to transfer any nuclear tech export or any export under international pressure. Iran went on a power travel India, but a lack of proliferation, sensitive experts, North Korea has no connection with Saudi Arabia, Pakistan has strong incentive to keep nuclear weapons, it has no nuclear weapons waiting for to Saudi Arabia, and you can't predict Black Swan events. Shot code 17 predictable ultimately hinges on the conflict Black Swans are changing events with such low probability they cannot be predicted, and having them predict would be a fool's game. Their structure are constantly evolving, even within a given conflict, the dynamic can dramatically change. Changes our Black Swan themselves are limited forecasts may be limited to the short term, and too many compounding shocks, predictions become futile. Predictions can affect behaviors and invalidate the original predictions. Actors cannot always respond in the same way, else they become predictable. Small event may lead to a cascading event. They got the same structure could accommodate an alternate equilibrium. We're unable to know which spark will ignite the keg theory. Framing. This standard is mitigating impression one of phenomenal introspection is most epistemologically viable or epistemically reliable historical moral disagreement over the internal conceptions of morality, such as questions of race, gender, queer, race, gender, class, the Lord, etc. Prove that the fallibility of non-observational based ethics. Introspection means we disvalue because we can determine that we disvalue oppression because we can always determine that we reject it. Just as I can observe a Yemen's yellowness, we can make judgments about oppression's badness. Jews reject 1% risk of extinction of causes all pulse making a skill and 91% doctrine cannot be applied in a world with many disaster scenarios, global warming, natural terrorists, etc. will deserve all our attention. We cannot address them simultaneously. We have to prioritize why should we only make these why not choose the other things we value. Why treat the cataclysm event as something fundamentally different. We get under our by copy constantly risking death, pursue the things we value, and increase the value of the precautionary principle would be either able to act nor not act. 3 is no action, distinction. Choosing to omit is an act in itself. People psychologically decide not to act, which means that being presented with the operates a choice between two actions, neither of which is an omission. And 4 is only consequential can explain degrees of wrongness of every promise to be for one that is not as bad as breaking a promise to take a dying person to the hospital. Only the consequences of breaking the promise can explain why the second one is so much worse than the first theory. 1 year theory paradigm A, the advocates, because otherwise the negative can engage in infinitely abusive practices, making affirming impossible. B is drop the debater. The short 1 year is irreparably skewed from abuse on substance and time investment on theory. C is no negative RVI. The 6-minute twin arc can collapse to a counterchip that is scripted and deter 1 year theory, allowing infinite 1 and C abuse. And spec is good for stable advocacy. Their answer means the app can shift definitions of authoritarian and has no unifying literature. Apps won't have a defense of their mechanism, will just devolve to ludicrously generic claims to win. Cool. 6.
Yeah. Judge ready?
Yep.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
What is military aid?
We don't take a stance on like what exactly military aid is. We would say that like refueling is like an instance of it, but if you like say something is not military aid, that's just a solvency deficit to the affirmative.
No, but like, okay, so what else would the AFF consider military aid? Because it seems like you kind of have to define what exactly you're removing from like aid to Saudi Arabia.
I don't see a need to define like what specific like programs are aid, like whether one specific plane is military aid and another.
I'm talking about like kinds of aid, like are arms sales, like selling of weapons, are those aid?
The affirmative doesn't really take a stance on arms sales. We say that refueling is probably military aid, and we would say that like logistics coordination is probably military aid.
Okay, on the Elbiger 19 card, where's the, like, what kind of aid is given to terrorists, or like on what magnitude is that aid given? Or like, how does the aid get to the terrorists?
The Elbiger card talks about how American weapons have been transferred to Al-Qaeda through the Saudi military.
How?
It's like what's the card name? Elbiger evidence doesn't take or doesn't like specifically detail like exactly whose hands it goes through, like whether
no, like,
it's Saudi to Yemen.
How does it go from the Saudi military to Al-Qaeda? Like, how did that happen? Or like, what was the process for that? Or does
it talks about how the weapons have made their way into the hands of Iranian rebels batting.
How?
Like, the news report is just reporting that American-made weapons
okay,
are in
but it
Iranian
doesn't
hands.
explain how, okay. On Fenton 18, it said, what does that card say?
The warrant in the Elbiger evidence is that The Saudis and the UAEs have used weapons to like buy support from tribes.
Wait, from tribes?
Yeah, Saudi and the UAE have used weapons as a form of currency to buy the loyalties of militias or tribes, bolster chosen armed actors, and influence the complex political landscape, according to local commanders on the ground
on
and
chapter
analysis of
17,
CNN.
what's a black swan?
The Shadowfo evidence is pretty specific about black swans. It talks about how black swans are such game-changing events that have such low probability that
Okay,
it's
so
impossible.
it's just like a repeating of the one, like reject 1% impacts?
Yeah, it's impossible to predict impacts that have such a low probability
Okay,
because there are always other
What
factors.
kind of impacts can be evaluated under the framework?
We would say like shorter-term actions that resolve material violence are.
Why focus on short term?
Because those are the ones that have like a higher, we can like have a better predictability.
Is
For
the
example,
plan-
we can't
is
say
the
like,
plan immediate?
what?
Is the plan immediate? Like like how does the AFF pass? Like how does the plan pass?
We would say that there's like multiple, or I think one possible implementation could be that the Trump administration like withdraws military aid from
Okay,
Saudi
I'm not
Arabia.
asking like who passes it or wherever, but like when the law is like made and it's passed, does aid end right then or there, or is there like a phase out process?
I think you should read normal means evidence and then we'll debate about what normal means is.
Okay. Order's gonna be 3 off then case.
Okay. Let me know when you send it up.
Good son.
Okay. Say it again.
Oh, sorry, is it
Oh,
the same? Haven't gone.
gotcha,
Oh,
gotcha. Yeah, I just gotta, give me a second.
sorry, what was the order again?
3 off then case,
Okay.
starting on framework.
Okay.
So everyone good?
Yeah.
Sorry. U.S. counterterrorism efforts are succeeding, but continued pressure is key to preventing terrorism from growing. Schmidt 18. Without continuing counterterrorism pressure, when there is ungoverned states that use as sanctuary, there will be resurgence. I see Islamic State as well as nearly all the territories seized in 2014 in Iraq and Syria, but it still controls about 1,000 square miles. Many of the grounds groups' leaders have been killed, but American officials warn that the Islamic State still holds a weight to carry out the attacks. And U.S.-Saudi joint military efforts are key to deterring terrorism. The affirmative precludes this. Lyman 16. In 2008, the United States and Saudi Arabia signed a bilateral agreement on technical counterterrorism cooperation. The U.S. military assistance training Saudi forces. Saudi officials are now vital to counterterrorism allies. They are playing a leading role in trying to stop the funding to the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. Considerable problems remain. Saudi-backed forces have focused on AQAP as well as the Houthis, forcing AQAP to retreat into several areas. And military aid preserves Middle Eastern stability. U.S.-backed Saudi forces are attributed to protecting the region from terrorism and preventing collateral damage. BPMA 18. Saudi Arabia plays a crucial role in maintaining security in the Middle East due to its economic, political, and cultural importance and strategic location. The U.S. works with Saudi Arabia to support counterterrorism efforts and our shared interests in regional stability. As a result, the U.S. security cooperation has been able to deter external attacks. Future bilateral multilateral training is designed to improve the Saudi security forces' understanding of identifying, targeting, and engaging correct targets while minimizing collateral damage. And in addition to massive violence, terrorism has a litany of devastating economic impacts. Antonio 18. The cause of terrorism extend far beyond physical destruction. In Iraq and Syria, ISIS has ransacked thousands of ancient heritage sites. The value of these sites and price of the sale of stolen artifacts make the ISIS second largest source of revenue. These losses are accompanied by the dramatic drop-off in tourism. A number of nations have suffered declines in tourism in the wake of terrorist attacks, dealing and devastating blow to their economies. Terrorists have targeted oil facilities. The prices of oil sales go to terrorist groups, diverting revenue that would normally be used to finance national infrastructure projects. Next off is the DISAD. Russia has entered the Middle East through the Syrian conflict, but is not involved deeply with other regional conflicts or nations. Slide 18. Russia's 2015 military intervention in Syria positioned Putin at the nexus of the Middle East overlapping conflicts. Russia has shown little inclination to wade into most of the region. Mirror conflicts such as the Yemen war, the Arab-Israeli peace process, and the dispute between Qatar and its neighbors. And reducing military aid to Saudi Arabia leads to a Russia Finland, Bradley 18. We witness what history books will say was the moment Saudi Arabia's relation pivoted from the West towards Russia. Putin is watching all this with relish. He's experiencing bumping up political opponents and having eradicated almost all trace of meaningful democracy and freedom of expression at home is able to offer the crown prince and hand French without repercussion. Now Saudi Arabia is negotiating the purchase of Russian S-400 defense missiles while threatening to cancel arms deals with the Western country and instead purchase weaponry from just if sanctions are imposed. And Russia re-entrenches authoritarianism in the Middle East. That turns to 1AC, Barman 18. Russian leadership projects its vision of autocratic stability into the region, the consolidation of power in the hands of the national leaders, as well as securitization of the political agenda have characterized the Russian political system throughout the last 17 years. Vladimir Putin has been in power. The case of Egypt and Turkey illustrate that Vladimir Putin is likely to encourage authoritarian stability across the region. Their security-heavy policies, but in support to autocratic tendency will hardly find any resistance among other powers in the region. Will be embraced as to Russia's terror policy and indication of highly centralized stability. Moscow's army for extremism throughout the wider region. The fear of new wave of extremism will push many regimes to seek more control over the population and lack of incentives to democrats, make a combating repressive regime. Russian leadership in the Middle East may significantly likely to reinforce the area of authoritarianism. He'll try to extend his evidence of saying that no villain is inevitable. His evidence gives no warrant as to why that villain came in. They just say that it would cost a lot of money, but no warrant on why Saudi Arabia wanted that action or why it would cost a lot of money. And our link evidence specifically talks about how Saudi Arabia is already in talks to purchase those weapons. If a villain really wouldn't have happened, these talks wouldn't be happening in the first place. Next off is the counterplan. Counterplan text: the U.S. federal government should revise the foreign aid allocation process as advocated by Miller and Sikorsky. Counterplan solves the gap. Stronger oversight and conditions incentivizes Saudi Arabia to change its oppressive policies. The affirmative does nothing to provide this incentive. Miller and Sikorsky 18. Before allocating security system recipients should first have to demonstrate their commitment to setting north standards and rules of good security sector governance. The State Department and Congress should create new mechanisms to rigorously assess, monitor, and evaluate security systems against performance measures that are linked to U.S. foreign policy objectives. The sale of weapons should be linked to new training commitments that the host country would have to fulfill in advance before taking delivery of the weapons and commitment to most of the American defense establishment agreeing principle and introducing more accountability for U.S. military systems and arms sales of war legal and bringing Russian and Chinese weapons into the force structure would create serious operational logistical problems for strong preference for use to given which they view as most superior to the alternative. Some American forces suggest they would be willing to suspend war workers oversight of that in price of obtaining American weapon use military system in the Middle East to magnify influence and help build local military forces that reduce the burden on U.S. forces. This stalls 100% of the app. The affirmative literally gives Saudi Arabia no incentive to change its oppressive policies or to continue the war, to look for other causes to continue the war. Only the counterplan provides incentive for Saudi Arabia to change those policies. Onto the app. First, we'll concede framework. We look to who best mitigates oppression or reduces structural impacts. No solvency. Countries will funnel other forms of foreign aid to the military. That amplifies violence. UK and Montana as well. Research shows that aid is fungible. Given for one purpose, allows governments to shift resources for other uses. Although Uganda has received considerable foreign aid designated for health care, hospital remains served for research. The Uganda example suggests that governments may more generally divert aid funds from development to use military spending. This would be disturbing in at least two ways. First, military spending doesn't promote development. Second, military resources are often used to repress domestic incentive developmental aid generally divert to military spending and could thus have pernicious economic and political effects. And status quo sells now. No reason to do the app. Newswire 2-7. Yemen's government and the Houthi rebels agreed on preliminary compromise for deploying forces, showing victories. That marks the first step towards ending the war. The ceasefire and redeployment have been handled as a major step toward ending Yemen's war. And military aid and arms are separate things. Their entire app is non-tolerant to the plan. Do control F arms sales. A lot of their evidence is talking about how arms sales are the main reason why the U.S. is backing the war and why all these bad things are happening. SIPRI 18. Most arms transfer are a commercial transaction where the buyer pays for the weapon. The common understanding of the term military is the supply of equipment and services, including training, and no cost of the recipient. And no solvency. The UK will continue providing aid. Sharman 18. The UK doubled the value of arms sales to countries on the government's list of human rights abuse of them past year. Sales were granted to Saudi Arabia. The government is actively arming and supporting many of the regions that it believes are responsible for terrible human rights abuse. UK made private jets and bombs for playing a central role in the Saudi-led destruction of Yemen. And no solvency. Plan gets circumvented through private military companies. Goal 6. The use of innovative financial procedures to utilize human services in U.S. foreign policy is dominant. The private side of humans easy they can use to skirt congressional mandates. The U.S. has been able to evade statutory prohibition on offering military assistance to certain nations by granting such aid through PMCs. And Turns case. PMCs lead to massive violence. McFate 16. Private military companies hire local subcontractors invisible to U.S. government officials linked to murder, kidnapping, robbery, and anti-coalition activity. They go into business for themselves, averting mercenary remarks in the wake of U.S. intervention. Such markets encourage dangerous policymaking private military companies to report to Congress circumventing democratic and economic contracts with all policymakers to wage war outside of the public eye. America's reliance on the contract to fight its war is launch a new breed of mercenary around the world. Yemen, Nigeria, Ukraine, Syria, and Iraq. No international laws exist to regulate the mercenary agency. And on 1AR theory, really gut check if they call the neg out for any abuse. If it doesn't seem abusive or too frivolous, then you should reject the theory. Now onto the AFF proper. First on this Dewan 18 evidence about how other countries are backing out or the UK is distant and hey, this is going to be the response to the UK alt calls. The problem is there's no warrant. It just says UK is second in distance. Our evidence gives specific numbers as to how much money the UK is giving to Saudi Arabia and how that is continuing to fuel violence. On this Evidar 19 evidence, the only thing that you can bring up in process is that they use this to bribe tribes, but that doesn't directly connect the tribes to terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda. In either way, those are minuscule compared to the impacts that our DISAT talks about, that on the scale counterterrorism has been effective when working with Saudi Arabia. On Pennant 18, where it says coalition promotes violence, there's no warrant for this. On Bando 18, where it says it results in peace talks, again, there's no warrant to this, and there's no reason to be out. Peace talks are already going on right now. The status quo is going to solve. They don't give you a unique reason to vote for them. Thus, you vote nay.
Cool.
Cross votes?
Yeah. Judge good? Cool. What was the answer on the Evigar evidence? You just said that it doesn't connect.
Sure, so like how you said in cross-ex that like Saudi Arabia is selling these weapons to like tribes.
What was the answer after Evigar?
That was on Fenton where you said like the coalition, oh wait no, I'm sorry, on Bando about like peace talks. That still doesn't give a reason to vote AFF because peace talks are going on right now.
Okay, so it goes Evigar, Bando, and then nothing after that?
I mean, on Riddle 18 I answered that like on the disapp look
Okay,
in
that's
Russia, or like Cav 2.
The reform counterplan?
Yeah.
The reform counterplan evidence, the Miller and Sokolowski evidence, it talks about how they're integrating Russian and Chinese weapons into their force structures would create serious operational and logistical problems. Strong preference for U.S. equipment, which they both view as superior to the alternatives. Why doesn't this prove no filling?
Sure, so two answers to that. First, it's talking about Chinese weapons, so it's not specific on how much Russia. Second thing, there's talks
It talks
going
about
on
Russia too.
Okay, there's still talks going on right now between Syria and Russia about buying their defense systems. So
About
that's,
Syria?
that shows that there's, I mean Saudi Arabia, I mean, I'm sorry,
Sure.
I just misspoke.
The status quo solves evidence. Have there been ceasefires before?
Not that I know of.
Okay, I guess you're just wrong.
Okay. You want to give evidence for that, you can.
Yeah, I'll read some, or like, Judge, you can read Google News, there have been tons of ceasefires before. The UK evidence, this is about arms sales. If it's true that military aid is not arms sales, then what's the impact?
Sure, so we're saying regardless of the app, the UK is still going to get aid. It doesn't matter what kind of aid the UK gives, that aid is still going to be used to cause violence.
Okay, the BPMA evidence, who is this written by?
I'm sorry, which evidence?
The BPMA on the terror disadvantage is the third card.
Sorry, I have to
No problem.
It's the Bureau of Political and Military Affairs. I couldn't find the author. It was so I just
Department of State. Yeah. So, why would we trust some government source that has the bias of Mike Pompeo, who's the current Secretary of State?
I mean, I think you can still trust that it's a government source, and if you don't buy that, you can look at like the other evidence that we give, like Schmidt 18 and Lyman 16.
I mean, these like the Schmidt 18 and the Lyman evidence are like uniqueness and link, but you're still missing an internal link, like on the BPMA.
No,
So-
I don't think so.
Sure. The Russia dissent?
Yeah.
Your evidence talks about, like the Bradley evidence talks about how, Putin or Saudi Arabia wants to buy Russia. Where do you read evidence that Saudi Arabia will buy Russian weapons or that they have the money to buy Russian weapons?
Sure, so I think them like being in talks with Russia shows that they have the resources or at least capability to buy those weapons, and then you can also look at how Russia wants to like enter the Middle East or at least like become a bigger player in the region.
Okay, 4 minutes of credit. What's the status of the counterclaim?
Conditional.
Okay. Okay, 138 though. Or wait, actually I need to take a bit more. Okay, 124 left. I'll send the document. The order, it's going to be the case page. I don't know what's going on with my screen. Yeah, it'll be the case page. The fill in just ad, which is like the Russia thing that they read first. The terrorist ad, and then the reform counterclaim.
So case Russia terror counterclaim?
Yeah.
Okay.
You. Good. The war in Yemen is a literal genocide. The plan solves it by halting arms provisions, refueling of the Royal Saudi Air Force, spare parts and tech support, which stops civilians and their infrastructure from getting up the line behind. Their first argument is that there is no solvency because there are other countries, but first is that this evidence, a point is that this evidence is about Uganda, not about Saudi Arabia, which means that it's lacking context and you should reject it. 2 point is that there were, the 2 point is that we're not giving other types of aid to Saudi Arabia like we are to Uganda. There isn't humanitarian aid and there isn't economic aid going to Saudi Arabia because they're basically a first world country. Their argument is that Scosal's argument, the ceasefire has been violated. You can look this up on Google News. There was a ceasefire in December. There was another ceasefire in January. None of these were solved. And this one, it doesn't have any this one says that it's just preliminary, which means that it probably won't solve either. They say that military aid is not the same as arms sales, but this evidence doesn't have any intent to define. It just talks about how military aid is supplying equipment and services. The Dewan evidence also proves that Saudi Arabia is basically stealing weapons from us because they are not paying for them in the status quo. The UK evidence, Dewan is better. It says the UK is only 23%, which is a quantification. You should prefer it on recency because it's much faster. They say PMCs, but this would have to circumvent congressional. This would have to circumvent instead the executive too. Their evidence is just about Congress, which means that if we defend all three governments, which is the United States, then the executive doesn't do it. Also, there's no way to fill in. Like, you can't put a PMC on a bomb and then like drop it. Like PMC, it just doesn't make any sense because the offense that we're going for is that refueling is bad and PMCs aren't like literal fuel. 1 year theory, this won't be a gut check, it'll be below. You should group all the Weinbauer arguments. They just said no warn a bunch of times, but this is in response to the Evigar answer. It is connected to terrorists. It proves that the United States gives arms to Saudi Arabia that are directly given to terrorists. The Bando evidence is right. There is war. We've done that above. Phil. There's no fill in the Saudis won't agree to a peace process. One is money-changing weapon systems cost a lot for even in Saudi Arabia. They'd rather agree to some concessions to the Houthis that take their economy. 2 is power. Saudis rely on U.S. spare parts and maintenance to keep weapons effective. Absent that, their support for their fleet effectiveness will quickly come in 3 days' time. Replacing U.S. weapons would require years of retraining and implementation of new systems. By the time it's over with, the war would already be over. And 4 is technology. Neither Russia nor China export the high-level aircraft needed for continued Saudi offenses. And even if we don't win the peace process, we still solve because Saudis will have no way to indiscriminately kill as many civilians with stuff. There's no fill in French 18 Saudi military is highly American weaponry at 15 tanks and infantry for any vehicles. They can't just waltz over another country without suffering enormous setbacks and readiness and effectiveness. Mark the card effectiveness. You should also read the evidence that they wrote on the counterpoint because it directly answers this. It says that Saudi Arabia has a huge preference for us. Care.
It's not unique. Statistical policies are failing cause blowback. 1918 U.S. policy in Yemen with defeat terrorism, drone attacks, bullshit, all kinds of narrative war, Muslims, the chaos of the other groups power and reaches only growing the U.S. intervention and self-prophetic attacks may be moving towards ACAB, and we are going for the evidence that it makes terrorism worse. We are going for the evidence that it makes terrorism a lot worse because it gives terrorists weapons. It means that they can continue to oppress continue to oppress people. Also, when we see evidence that is about ACAB, it's empirically proven that the Saudi military aid is just given to, or is circumvented by Saudis, and then ends up causing blowback in the region and makes people anti-American conditions. Perm to the counter when they haven't read seen evidence, so you should presume it's not functionally competitive, which is the best basis for competition because it avoids getting bogged down in potentiality. Perm to both. Tell them that we'll continue it if the conditions are rapid outer. Actually give them the 8 solves their internal benefit. 3 is solvency. Now, since Saudi Arabia meets the conditions superficially, they just use shallow for PR to not get their core question. Myers 1848 from Saudi Arabia could be continued. Capable city Saudi Arabia requires specific concessions in the favorable news. The kingdom transfer humanitarian and the social transaction conditionality is our North Dakota transaction. Conditionality is the voting issue. Destroys the one area because we have to answer to 2 different worlds, which is unreciprocal and kills fairness. Cool.
Alright, starting what were the conditionality arguments?
It's that, it's what's the one error means that we have to argue against 2 different worlds, which kills reciprocity fairness.
Okay, was that the only thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Then, were there any parts in the doc you didn't read, just to make sure?
Yeah, there were.
Which ones?
On the counterclaim, the Bosey evidence that Trump reverses it.
I didn't have, oh, okay, so Bosey.
I didn't read like a bunch of the no fill-in stuff.
Okay, can you like give me author names, just so I know like which ones?
Yeah. I read the French evidence and I marked it at effectiveness. I didn't read the Hartung evidence in the one error. I didn't read the Benjamin and Cornish evidence that Saudis can't flip their arsenal. I didn't read the Gouet evidence. I didn't read the Bandow evidence and I didn't read the House evidence.
Okay, thanks. And then how many perms was it on the counterclaim?
It was perm to the counterclaim and perm to both.
Okay. What was the perm on the counterclaim?
It was just like perm to the counterclaim. It's not textually competitive because you just add words. And then perm to both, the text is there.
Yeah. order is going to be counterplan with the conditionality stuff, terror DA, Russia DA.
Okay, reform, terror, Russia case.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's workers.
Is everybody ready?
Yeah.
Except Miller and Skoski, 18 and Fresco, they completely conceded the incentive argument that we made. This is a solid stance on the affirmative. They literally give Saudi Arabia no incentive to change any of its policies. Only the affirmative is giving the Saudis any actual incentive to change the world. They just withdraw aid without telling Saudi how to do anything, how to react, or how to reacquire aid. Only the counterplan is giving them any type of incentive. That's a solving deficit on them, and why the counterplan solves 100% of the app. On to the perms. First, on this perm to the counterplan, it doesn't matter if we said to say no. It is obvious that you can't do a perm saying like, yes, let's take away aid, but at the same time we'll give them aid. That is not only shifting the 1AR, but it's also severance. That's also severance on the 1AC, and it's completely illogical to say that we'll continue giving aid on a certain amount of conditions when we say that we'll end aid in the first place. That's a complete contradiction on the affirmative advocacy. And then on the perm to again cross-apply this, they made this argument that they solve public relations, and they say that they just simply won't give it in the first place. This is exactly why Russia would fill in, because Saudi Arabia would realize that they're not getting any aid from America, so Russia or other countries would fill in. Then this also harms U.S. influence in the region, because the U.S. is unable to get good influence with Saudi Arabia, and that's a solving deficit on the app. Onto this conditionality stuff, they completely conceded all the arguments that we made against to reject 1AR theory. If it's obvious that having one conditional counterplan isn't abusive, then you can reject all of their theory arguments. And then as a response to their this splitting 1AR theory and then like reciprocity and fairness, they literally spent less than 30 seconds on the counterplan. It didn't really split the 1AR that much. If it's really that much of abusive, they could have spent the time that they made doing these conditionality arguments to actually answer the counterplan. If it's obvious that doing 3 alt and 1 conditional counterplan isn't abusive, just reject all their 1AR theory arguments. It's a norm in LD to have 1 conditional counterplan. This is a stupid, frivolous theory argument. If anything, you should allow a negative RVI because of the time we're having to spend this and just simply the frivolous nature of the shell itself. They didn't extend any of their no-neg RVIs things, so this argument still stands. Now onto terror. First, on this Schmidt 18 evidence, you should prefer the negative analysis. You should extend Schmidt 18 crystal that shows an empirical analysis on the negative side, where it shows that U.S. counterterrorism efforts in the Middle East are actually working. You look towards the Biden 16 evidence. Also, you can extend that across the law and how specifically working with the Saudis has helped to deter terrorism in the Middle East. And then also, you should extend the BPMA 18 evidence. All 3 of these cards show exact empirics, not only of how counterterrorism by the U.S. is working, but how specific counterterrorism and working with Saudi Arabia has also worked. This takes out their Menon evidence because it's only talking about 1 instance. And you should also prefer the Schmidt evidence because it's more recent as well, the BPMA evidence, and it also outweighs on other qualifications. We come from the U.S. government and also qualified scholars in the area. On this Evigar on case, we answered this. He also conceded in the 1AR, the 1NC argument that we made on how about how Evigar doesn't matter because on the whole, the dissent shows that a majority of the time counterterrorism aid works, regardless if it's sold to a couple of tribes in the area. You should also extend the Antonio 18 evidence on how terrorism uniquely harms individuals by producing mass economic harm for these individuals, in addition to the massive violence. That's the turn onto the 1AC because it's causing massive violence, massive terrorism, and overall doing things that are not doing anything to stop the conflict in Yemen. Onto Russia. First, they make these 4 arguments about like money, power, time, and technology. First, there's no warrant for the money and power argument, and then also PMCs can be cross-applied this, and then also it doesn't matter about if Saudi Arabia can afford it or if they want to do it in the first place. Russia wants to fill in the Middle East. That was the that was the slide 18 evidence. Extended across below. That argument shows how Russia wants to literally get into the Middle East, so they'll do whatever they can in order to get Saudis. If they see the U.S. stepping out of the equation, then Russia will step in and try to reassert their dominance in the Middle East. That triggers the impact. Extend Bradley 18 across below. That shows that reducing military and taking the U.S. out of the equation leads to Russia failing because the Saudis are already in talks with Russia. The ink just has been dried on the paper. The Russia will step in and that will reassert authoritarianism in the Middle East. That's Barman 18. Extended across below. It doesn't matter if the deal actually takes place. It's simply the perception of Russia becoming buddy with Saudi Arabia and thereby re-entrenching authoritarianism across the Middle East, taking the U.S. out of the equation and simply saying authoritarianism is going to be taken out. And this is also why the counterplan Salty makes this argument about how like the counterplan answers this directly. Again, we make the incentive arguments on here and our evidence shows that Saudi Arabia is already in talks with Russia. Refer that evidence. On to case. First, on UK and Montana 12, their only argument on here is about Uganda. They misunderstand the function of this evidence. The United States still gives other forms of aid to Saudi Arabia in the form of economic aid or developmental aid or simply trading aid. That aid is going to be diverted to military funds. Extend UK and Montana 12 across the globe. Two things are going to happen here. That economic aid is going to be diverted back to the military, thereby being a salty deficit. And second, that aid is going to be cut from things such as social welfare programs, which are key to preserving the quality of life of Saudi Arabian citizens and people all across the globe. That's two different impact scenarios that the affirmative causes. All this newswire evidence, they say that multiple other peace talks have happened, but the problem is our newswire evidence specifically says that these types of peace talks that are going on right now are directly going to lead to peace, which gives you no unique reason to vote affirmative. Extend that across the globe. And then onto this SIPR 18 evidence, they make this argument about that there's no intent to define. The card literally says the common understanding of the term military is the supply of equipment and services, including training, at no cost to the recipient. Arms sales cause that cost to the recipient. They are directly non-topical to military. That means that the affirmative doesn't have any solvency when it comes to resolving this, because the majority of the impacts they're talking about are as a result of military aids. Don't buy their UK, and then we'll address their refueling arguments down the flow. On Charmin 18, they say that their evidence is UK 23%. Our evidence literally says that UK-made fighter jets and bombs are playing a central role in the Saudi-led destruction of Yemen. It doesn't matter if it's 23% of the aid. It shows that the UK's role is central in the bombing campaign against Yemen. That's a huge all cause that they don't do anything to solve for. If anything, is a huge solvency deficit, it still doesn't give you sufficient reason to vote out. Now onto the PMC arguments. You can extend Goal 6 and Mifid 16 across the globe. They make this argument of circumvention. However, it doesn't matter. It still happens regardless of which branch you're using. And simply by the laws that are passed by the United States through Congress and through other branches, that PMCs are still able to circumvent that and not be held democratically accountable. They also say that it makes no sense. They misunderstand the point of it. PMCs are involved with a litany of different things, including the refueling of airplane jackets. That still shows a huge solvency deficit and how violence is only going to be reinstated. The round breaks down very simply. They conceded also on Bando 18 about they didn't provide any more on how this results in actual peace, and then also in CAP 18 we answered this on the flow. The round breaks down very simply. There's a huge bunch of solvency deficit. They trigger a lot of violent impacts in Russia filling, and the counterplane stalls. Reject the perms and vote on the neg RBI.
Is it okay if I get water?
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Thank you.
What?
The order is going to be the case page. The reform counterplan, starting on conditionality. The Russia argument, and then the terror argument. Let me know you.
I'm good.
Sure.
Wait, this case counterpoint Russia terror?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, yeah, good.
The war in Yemen is a literal genocide that plans assaulted by halting arms provisions, refueling of the Royal Saudi Air Force, spare parts, and technology support, which stops civilians in their infrastructure from getting blown up and stops innocent civilians from getting murdered. The key framing issue in this round is that they went for a bunch of things, but they didn't develop any of the positions and they didn't weigh them, which means that if we win that the AFF outweighs the disadvantages, then it means that you should vote affirmative. The Label on the advantage. They're first they go for the UEG evidence, but they conceded Uganda answer that this is about Uganda and that they misunderstand it. It's basically that the evidence is out of context because it's about Uganda, not Saudi Arabia, and proves that the Ugandan mechanisms are unlikely to exist in Saudi Arabia, which proves that there's no circumvention. They conceded that there are tons of ceasefires that are violated. It doesn't lead to peace. Stealing or military arms sales are military aid because they are literally stolen from the U.S. government. Saudi Arabia is not paying Trump for them. Trump just did it because he wanted to look good. The UK role key argument, the Bando evidence proves that if the United States pulls out military aid, then it'll be enough to resolve the war in the first place. UK role might be, or UK role might have some refueling, but the affirmative is still good because it obviously stops a bunch of bombings and it stops Saudi Arabia from being able to continue the circumvention on PMCs. PMCs aren't used for bombs. You can't use PMCs you can't put a PMC on an airplane and then drop it on people. It just doesn't work like that. And PMCs even if they do refueling, Saudi troops can do refueling as well. It's not the issue about who does the refueling, but rather whether the goods and the oil is provided to refuel in the first place. The case outweighs, the case outweighs on probability will win, or we basically won our advantage, and we just need to disprove some of the negatives arguments in order to win. The 2 point is that the case outweighs on time frame because people are dying in Yemen right now. But things like authoritarianism and terror are very broad concepts that are probably non-unique in the region and take a long time to manifest. You should prioritize saving innocent civilians over their arguments because people are dying now, and other people and other actors like the GCC, like the Gulf Cooperation Council, can solve terrorism and authoritarianism. The RBI argument on conditionality. There's no offense here. It's unfair. Conditionality is bad. Conditionality is also unfair because it forces us to split the one error. They just put defense on it. This is not a reason to vote us down. The Russia argument. We are going for the technology argument that Russian tech is not interoperable with American tech, which means that even if Russians do provide some tech, it still won't coordinate with American tech. It's proven by their counterpoint solvency advocate who says that Saudis have a strong preference and don't want to go for that, or Saudis don't want to go for Russian weapons terror. This was super blippy. Our argument that we were going for is the Menon evidence that proves that terror is happening in Saudi Arabia right now, which proves that it's basically non-unique. Cool.
So do you all prefer if I just close?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then give me a minutes.
Okay.
we're getting close to done in this room.
Oh, yeah, sorry, is there another round happening
Yeah,
here?
there
Oh,
is,
sorry,
yeah.
we started kinda late, can we do
Okay.
like 3 minutes?
Okay,
It's okay?
sure.
Yeah, sorry guys, also I'm slow. Okay, so in the end, I voted for the negative, and I think it was kind of a hard choice. There's a lot to follow here, so I'll try and go over all the arguments. So first off, on the whole no neg RBIs and all of the theory arguments, I ended up not really looking at that too much because I don't think the app spent that much time on the theory, and also it seemed like a smaller issue. There wasn't really like clearly defined theory shells. So more looking on the case, I think the negative did sufficient defense against the affirmative. I thought the affirmative definitely had some good refutations to the neg's case attacks. Like at first I thought I was going to buy the whole argument about how their evidence being specific to Uganda, not Saudi Arabia, when we don't look at that, but the neg did end up refuting that, and I think the AF would need a little bit more work on why, like, just because they're different countries doesn't mean we can't look at that example, and I think it would need just a few more lines of arguments for what exactly distinguishes the two that much. I think the AF does answer a few of these arguments decently well. On the UK evidence, on both sides, I would have liked to see, on both sides, like a little bit more weighting. Like I see this 23% quantity being thrown out, but on both sides, if both of you talked a little bit more about why like 23% is nothing, it doesn't really count like on the AF side, versus on the next saying like the how this still is significant, that might have been a little bit better. So in the end, on the counter plan, I think the neg and the NR made sufficient responses to both of the perms, and those weren't really responded to or extended as well in the 2AR. And so I think the negative does get access to all of these issues with, or like the AF doesn't get access to the reform CP anymore, and the neg does get all of their advantages. And I think that coupled with the fact that the neg was refuting the solvency, especially I think the Uganda card is what I thought was the biggest defense on the case. That's what I ended up voting on. Sorry, I have one more thing to bring up, I think. Oh yeah, I think, so for the neg, I think in the end it would have been nice to have a little bit more weighting too, especially since a lot of the AF's cards on like, they brought up at the end about how the short-term impacts really need to be done now. So in the end, I just looked at the turns, the straight turns, which in that case they do link into the firmware since you did concede. But I think that definitely could have been a big issue. That would make this a lot harder. So yeah, that's one comment I have. Any questions? I'll write more on the time room.
Hey, I have 3 questions.
Okay.
First is like, how would you recommend beating these types of scattershot 2NRs that go for every case answer?
Yeah, 2NR with every case answer.
Yeah, because like
okay,
on my
so,
flow I have like them going for every single case answer in like very short amount of time.
Yeah, that's definitely hard. You mean in the 2AR what to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think like the main thing is writing down what you can definitely lose on. So I think one big thing is like even though you don't have that much time, try to at least like extend the perm a little bit, because that's the only thing that I have written down on the 1A. Well, the main thing that we have for the 1AR in the contract plan. Oh, sorry, yeah, we can head out.
Yeah.
Do you think that the,
Because like I know it like kind of sucks trying to put defensive into an art, but I think when we have these like big issues, like the whole counter net, that would be.
do you think that the, evidence that I read about,
Or actually, alternatively, I think something that could help was, I think the weighing at the end was pretty good. That made me like tempted to go AF. But I think you would have to be a little bit more specific with workers impact, because you were just talking about weighing with like just the authoritarianism impact versus I would like to see a little bit more tied in. Like I know he has a lot of impacts all throughout there, but he mentioned some of his like safety advantages and weighted that into it. Said like, hey, these are literally all even his terms are like long-term terms. Then that definitely would help. But yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, great job. Thanks.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Good luck. How's it
Yeah,
going?
yeah, thank you.
What are you doing? I'm sorry, I'm really blind, so I like turn around and I didn't really see your face. So I was like, why are you here?